All right, IP version 6. There are some improvements. But it's mostly that we want more possible addresses. And I'm not going to draw this one out because all I really care about right now is in IP version 6 it has 128-bit IP addresses. Okay? So where ours up here are 32, these are 128 bits long. That's a lot. 32 gives you a few billion different IP addresses. Obviously 128 is going to give you a lot more. This is so big that they were going to put the MAC address to be the host part. So this is again so big or so wide, such a big field, that they could put the 48-bit MAC address in as your host part. Okay? And when they were coming up with this in the early 90s, they were like, this is what we need to do, and that would be really cool because we hate having to set host parts. Okay? It's one way to make your IP address come up automatically. The problem is there is a privacy issue. You all know that your cookies are used to track you all over the place on the internet. Well, if they could put your MAC address on your IP address, they wouldn't need cookies because they would have a unique identifier for your computer all the time. Okay? So we'll put privacy equals no on that one. Okay? So people don't typically put the MAC address as the host part and an IP address. All right? So IP version 6, again, 128-bit IP addresses. So the question is, we are out of IP version 4 addresses. So where is IP version 6? Is anybody using IP version 6? No, probably not. Okay. So we are completely out. Well, not completely out, because we still are kind of scrambling around. The first thing is the IP version 4 addresses aren't scarce. We'll just put aren't that scarce. And you can do that, or they're not scarce, because we can have what's called network address translation. This is the sharing of IP addresses, and we will talk about that in the next unit. Okay? So again, the version 4 addresses aren't that scarce yet. The other thing about this is IP version 6 breaks some protocols or services. So imagine, of course, if I wrote a program and I was relying on, for example, a 32-bit IP version 4 address in it, and now suddenly there's a new thing that comes out that has 128-bit IP addresses, now I've stopped working. Does that make sense? Because I can't handle it. It's too big. The field I set up, it just doesn't fit. Okay. These have become more and more sort of fixed. So most new, we'll put OS's support. I think you can even get XP support for IP version 6. And a Mac has supported it, I think, since 10.4. So the newer OSs do support IP version 6. If you buy a router, that's also going to support it. Okay. So again, what's happened is routing your OS, it was all hard-coded to IP version 4. Now with IP version 6, they've had to go back and update it. Okay. The main one that's not working too well is DNS. And they basically had to hack. I say hacked, but hacked still to you means bad things, right? What do you call that? Had to be, well, I wouldn't say it updated. They had to do some funky thing to it. We'll say patched, okay? Usually you would just say hacked, though. Hacked means they got something to work quickly that works, but it's not great, okay? And it has, normally with DNS you get an A record. So if I type in a name, it'll send back what's called an A record, and that's IP version 4. So that's the whole purpose of this, right? DNS was to send you back, if you typed in a name, to give you back an IP version 4 address. So how do we get it to give you an IP version 6 address? It was hacked. They hacked DNS. Now it gives what's called, I think it's a 4A address, which is totally stupid, but it kind of works. So you can now, and they do this once a year, they'll go to the IP version 6 conference. And for 1 week, all the people at the well, not a week, while the people are at the conference, probably just in the conference room, they sort of agree that they're only going to use IP version 6. And at first, nothing worked. You can't do a Google search, you can't do anything. But as they've gone more and more, they've gotten DNS to sort of work. But even then, like Google has a 4A entry, Facebook has one, but nobody else does. So we're a long way still from IP version 6. Don't let anybody fool you. Everything is, pretty much everything has been updated to support it. So the number, it's there that it can transport stuff around the internet. But we don't have sort of the glue, just for example, DNS. We don't have the glue that puts your applications so they can use this new protocol. Okay? There's still a lot of work to do. Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty nasty. If you even think about it, people are still writing programs that only work on IP version 4. So you think about your smartphone apps, right? Whatever, I don't know, my kids have started playing Clash of Clans. And I'm sure, I can't 100% verify it, but I'm sure that in Clash of Clans, it's going to an IP version 4 server address to pick up, whatever they built or all that other stuff, okay? And that it could only work in IP version 4. That if their phone switched to IP version 6, all of a sudden stuff would just stop working. So just be aware of this. And it's stuff that, we'll probably be doing it ourselves, or you all will. I am, because I grew up with this. But when you write a new application, you have the option, right, to try to make it sort of version independent of IP, but it's going to be tough. So IP version 6, we're supposed to be using it, but, we'll just see what happens.